Today we will see the final account problem. Problem number 1. Let's see the problem. You are required to prepare financial statement from the following trial balance of Hira Chemicals Limited for the year ended 31st March 2012. यहाँ पर आपको जो फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट बनानी है वो कंपनी की बनानी है, पार्टनरशिप फर्म की नहीं बनानी है, प्रोप्राइटर की नहीं बनानी है. तो यू शुड नो द शेड्यूल 6 ऑफ द कंपनीज एक्ट. The formats of balance sheet and profit and loss accounts are given in the Schedule 6 of the Companies Act. So we will see later on what are the schedules. First, let's see the complete questions. Hira Chemicals Limited trial balance sheet. Balance as 31st March 2012 are given. The stock, furniture, etc. and credit side also given. The question continues. And debit side, there are following items. Additional information is given. Closing stock on 31st March 2012 was 8,23,000. This is additional information. Remember, whatever items which are given in the trial balance, you just have to give one effect of that, and whatever information given in the additional information, you will have to give two effects of those additional information items. We will see later on completely all these things. Before we start to solve this question, let's see the format of balance sheet as prescribed under Schedule 6 of the Companies Act. Format of balance sheet is as follows. First of all, we will see the equity and liability side. You have to remember, you have to mark this schedule. Let's say first see shareholders fund. It is the first item. It is bifurcated into three subheads: share capital, reserves and surplus, and money received against share warrants. After that, the main heading is share application money pending allotment. Then comes non-current liabilities, long-term borrowing, deferred tax liability. If it is having a credit balance, deferred tax liability will come here. Other long-term liabilities, long-term provisions. Then another heading is current liabilities. In current liabilities, you have to bifurcate like short-term borrowing, trade payables, other current liabilities, short-term provisions, and the total. Let's see the asset side of the balance sheet. Non-current assets, first you have to mention. In non-current assets, the bifurcation is fixed asset. Fixed assets have been again bifurcated in tangible, intangible, capital work in progress, intangible asset under development, fixed asset held for sale. Then another heading is non-current investment, that is long-term investment. Deferred tax asset, if it is having an debit balance, then it will come on the asset side. Long-term loans and advances, other non-current assets. Another main heading is current assets. So current assets will include current investment, inventory, trade receivables, cash and cash equivalents, short-term loans and advances, and other current assets. I advise all of you to just mark this schedule so that you will be able to solve the question very quickly. Now let's see the format of profit and loss account as prescribed under Schedule 6. There is a revised Schedule 6 of the Companies Act. Revenue from operations. This is the first item. Then other incomes, and that will give you the total revenue. Now you have to mention the expenses. Expenses will be mentioned under the following heads: cost of material consumed, purchases of stock in trade, changes in inventory of finished goods, work in progress and stock in trade, employee benefit expenses, fixed finance costs, depreciation and amortization expenses, other expenses, total expenses. Again, I advise you to just mark this schedule and try to write down on the piece of paper. It will help you a lot while solving the question. After that, you will get the profit before exceptional and extraordinary item and taxes. Then you have to adjust the exceptional items. You will get the profit before extraordinary items and taxes. You have to adjust the extraordinary items. Then you will get the profit before tax. Now, after getting the profit before tax, you have to deduct the tax expenses. In tax expenses, you have to bifurcate tax expenses, current tax and deferred tax. You will get the profit for the period from continuing operations, profit or loss from discontinuing operation. Again, there are two bifurcation. There is a continuing operation, what is the profit, and what is the profit from discontinuing operations. Tax expenses of discontinuing operations, Then you will get profit from discontinuing operations. So there is a bifurcation. You can see the earlier schedule 6 never mentioned the format, although it mentioned the content of profit and loss. But this time revised schedule has mentioned the format of profit and loss, and format covers all these. So you have to prepare the P&L as per this format latest, in which you have to mention the discontinuing operation profit and loss also. Profit or loss for the period you will get earning per equity share, and this is the final thing, the profit for the period you will get, and then you have to give the details of earning per equity share, the basics and the diluted. Now we will move to our question and we will try to see how you can solve that question, in which the trial balance is given and you have to prepare the financial statement. First we will analyze the trial balance. This is the most important step, that for solving the question you have to analyze each item given in the trial balance. Let's see how to analyze. First we will see the debit side. Let's see the stock. Stock is given in the trial balance, that is 6,80,000. Where it will go? It is the opening stock, because it is mentioned in the trial balance. And the debit side, you can guess that is the opening stock, and the opening stock will go to the profit and loss account and debit side of the profit, and the item head in which it will go, cost of material consumed. Remember that you have to prepare the notes to the accounts. Earlier you had to prepare the schedules, but now you have to prepare the notes to the accounts, and these are the heads under which you can prepare the notes to account. So stock will go the profit and loss, debit side, cost of material consumed is the head. Then furniture, it's an asset, balance sheet, asset side under the tangible assets. Discount, since it's the debit discount, it's the expenses, P&L, debit balance. Manufacturing and other expenses. Loan to director, you have, that is the company has given loan to director, so it is a debit balance, and since it is a debit balance, it will go to the balance sheet asset side under the head short term loans and advances. Advertisement 20,000 debit balance, P&L debit, manufacturing and other expenses. Bad debts, you know, it is the loss 35,000, P&L debit side, manufacturing and other expenses. Commission 1,20,000, having a debit balance, P&L debit side, manufacturing other expenses. Purchases will go to the P&L debit side. Remember, cost of material consumed, this is the head under which the purchases will go. Plant and machinery 8,60,000, balance sheet asset side in the tangible asset category. Rentals, it is a debit rental, so it is a expenditure, so P&L debit side, manufacturing and other expenses. Current account 45,000. Remember, this current account is not what you used to do in partnership. It's a current account with the bank. It's an asset, and it will be shown in the cash and cash equivalent balance sheet asset side. Cash 8,000, again balance sheet asset side, cash and cash equivalents. Interest on bank loan 1,16,000. Again, it's a debit side expenditure, so you have to debit the P&L under the head interest and other financial charges. Preliminary expenses 10,000, balance sheet asset side, other current asset. Now we'll go to the next slide. Fixtures 3 lakh, balance sheet asset side, tangible assets. Wages 9 lakh, profit and loss, debit balance, manufacturing and other expense. Consumable, again it's a debit balance, P&L, manufacturing and other expenses. Freehold land, it's a asset, it will go to the balance sheet asset side under the head tangible asset. Tools and equipment, again balance sheet asset side, tangible assets. Goodwill 2,65,000, balance sheet asset side, intangible assets. Remember, goodwill is not a tangible asset, it is intangible. And remember, there may be some authors may include intangible, but you have to include in intangible assets. Data, again data you have to, it's your asset, and you have to include in trade receivable as per the new revised format of balance sheet. you have to include the data in trade receivables. Bills receivable also you need to include under the normally trade receivable balance sheet asset side. Now dealers aids 21,000. Since it is a debit balance, it is expenditure, will charge to P&L, manufacturing and other expenses. Transit insurance of 30,000, it is also expenditure, P&L, debit side, manufacturing, other expenses. Trade expenses, directly manufacturing and other expenses, P&L. Distribution freight charges. So again it's the debit side, P&L, manufacturing, other expenses. Debenture interest 20,000, again is the expenditure. It will be charged to P&L, debit side, but it will go under the head interest and other charges. This will give you the total of debit side, that is 85,35,000 you have analyzed till now, the debit side of the trial balance. Additional information what is given is stock, that is the closing stock is given 8,23,000. I already told you that additional information whatever is given, it will always have two effects. So the two effects what you have to give for the closing stock, one will go to the asset side of the balance sheet under the head current asset, and another will go to the debit side of P&L. Remember, under debit side you have to include in the statement cost of material consumed. You will prepare a note, cost of material consumed, and in which head you have to include the closing stock. The formula for cost of material consumed is given opening stock plus purchases minus closing stock. We will see while preparing the note. After this we will analyze the credit side of the trial balance. Equity share capital, no doubt it will go to the balance sheet liability side, share capital. 11% debentures 5 lakh, balance sheet liability side under the long term borrowings. Bank loan, balance sheet liability side, long term borrowings. Bills payable, again bills payable you normally need to include under the balance sheet liability side. Trade payables. Creditors, again trade payables under the balance sheet liability side. Sales, it will be credited to the profit and loss account, and the heading is revenue from operations. Rent received, this is your income because it's having credit balance, it will go to the credit side of P&L under the head other incomes. Transfer fee, again it's the credit balance, it's your income, other income mein jayega P&L ke. Profit and loss account 1,39,000, P&L, add to the profit after tax. See, this profit and loss account is having a credit balance, it is given the trial balance, it means it shows the previous balance in the profit and loss account, last year's balance. It will be added to the profit after tax of this year. Depreciation provisions on machinery is given 1,46,000. You know that depreciation need to be deducted from the fixed asset to arrive at the net figure. So you can deduct this much depreciation from the machinery. Total 85,35,000. So we have analyzed debit side of the trial balance. We have ascertained the effects which we have to give. We have analyzed the credit side of the trial balance and effects which we have to give. Now preparation of notes to account. This is the next step. After analyzing the trial balance, you have to prepare the notes to accounts. Let's see. Working notes. Share capital, authorize. First of all, write the authorized share capital, that is 25 lakh. The company cannot issue shares beyond this category. Issued, subscribed and paid up capital, rupees 10 each, 25 lakh. Now reserves and surplus, this is another note. Balance as per the last balance sheet was 1,39,000. Balance in the profit and loss account 6,11,000. So total will come 7,50,000. Long term borrowings, debentures 5 lakh, bank loan 645,000. So gives you 11,45,000. Trade payables, creditors and bills payable. It gives the total to 81,000. Tangible assets, goodwill. I just want to again remind you, the goodwill is intangible asset. You have to include in intangible, although few authors may include in tangible, but you have to continue to include in intangible asset. For the time being, as per the institute solution, I have included in tangible, but again I am reminding you, you have to include in intangible asset, goodwill. Again, freehold land, this is again tangible. Furniture, fixture, plant machinery. Remember, in plant and machinery, you have to deduct depreciation, which is given in the trial balance. We have already discussed that. Total equipment 2,45,000. Now the total of tangible assets is coming like this: gross less depreciation and net. Cash and cash equivalent, current account balance and cash. This gives you 53,000. Short-term loans and advances. Loans to director 80,000. Bills receivable 1,53,000. The total is 2,33,000. You again see red item. I have given it in red, bill receivable. It is trade receivables. You should include this in trade receivables, but as per the institute, they have included in short-term loans and advances, so I have included here. Otherwise, you have to keep in mind that you can include in trade receivables, and goodwill you can include in intangible asset, not tangible assets. Let's move on. Other income, so rent received and transfer fees. So other income 56,000. The most important is cost of material consumed. Opening stock, add purchases and less closing stock. You will get the cost of material consumed 21,76,000. Manufacturing and other expenses, there are a lot of items you will see in this: consumables, wages, bad debts, discount, rental, commission, advertisement, dealers aids, transit insurance, trade expenses, distribution, freight. We have already analyzed all these items, and now we are arranging in the notes, and the total of manufacturing other expenses is coming 14,01,000. Interest and other financial charges. Let's see, interest on bank loan 1,16,000. Debenture interest 20,000. So total is 1,36,000. Preparation of profit and loss account. Now finally we will prepare the profit and loss account. Hira Chemicals Limited, profit and loss account for the year ended 31st March 2010. Income, revenue from operations, other income 56. We have already prepared a note of other income. You can see that, note number 8. Expenses, cost of material consumed, note number 9. Manufacturing other expenses, interest and other financial charges. So the expenses column comes 37,13,000. So profit before tax comes 6,11,000. Provision for tax nil. No provision is given and no information about provisions to be made, so it is nil. Profit after tax is 6,11,000. Balance of profit and loss account brought forward. This is last year's balance in profit and loss, so we will add it to the profit after tax. Balance carried to balance sheet 7,50,000 will go to the balance sheet reserves. Preparation of balance sheet. Let's see how to prepare the balance sheet. Balance sheet as at 31st March 2012. Equity and liabilities. Shareholders fund. Capital, we have already prepared note number 1, reserve surplus, note number 2. Now we will go to the non-current liabilities. Secured loans, long-term borrowings, note number 3 you can see. Current liabilities, trade payables, note number 4. Assets. Non-current assets, fixed asset. In non-current fixed asset, tangible assets, current assets, inventories, trade receivables, cash and cash equivalents. Note number 6, 53,000. Short-term loans and advances, note number 7. Other current assets, 10,000. So this is how you have to prepare the balance sheet of the company. Note, other assets represents the preliminary expenses not written off, rupees 10,000. Earlier format we used to give this preliminary expenses under the head miscellaneous expenditure, but now we have to mention all these preliminary expenses not written off under the heading other current assets. This is how we come to the conclusion of this solution. For any doubts or query, you can directly call at this number. Thank you.